I never thought my 10-year-old daughter would become both my savior and my weapon of revenge. But that night, as I lay bleeding on our pristine marble kitchen floor, I heard something that would destroy my husband's life forever. The faint sound of Zoe whispering from upstairs. "Uncle Jerome, it's me, Zoe. I need help. Daddy hurt Mommy again, but this time I have proof of everything. Not just the hitting. The cheating too." My heart stopped despite the ringing in my ears from where Victor had struck me. I could barely make out her tiny voice floating down from her bedroom, but every word was crystal clear. How long had she been watching? How much had my precious little girl discovered about the man who was supposed to protect us both? Just minutes before, I had been confronting Victor about the burner phone I'd found hidden in his golf bag. The phone filled with photos, messages, and evidence of not one affair, but 3. Anastasia from his office, sending him pictures I couldn't bear to think about. Gabrielle from next door, planning secret rendezvous while her husband traveled. And the worst betrayal of all, Felicia, my former best friend, telling him how stupid I was for not knowing about their year-long affair. If you haven't experienced betrayal that cuts this deep, consider yourself fortunate. But if this story sounds familiar, if you're seeing signs in your own life, please keep listening. Your story doesn't have to end in silence. When I confronted Victor with the phone, his face had gone white, then red with rage. "You had no right to go through my things, Kelly." But I was beyond caring about his anger. For the first time in 3 years, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt fury. 3 women, Victor. 3. While I've been playing the perfect wife, covering your bruises with makeup and making excuses for why we can't visit my family, that's when he grabbed the phone from my hands and shoved me backward. I stumbled, trying to catch myself on the kitchen island, but his fist connected with my cheek before I could steady myself. The blow sent me reeling into the cabinet, and I went down hard, my head striking the marble with a sickening crack. From where I lay, I could see his expensive Italian shoes pacing back and forth, and I knew I had to stay down, stay quiet, and wait for the storm to pass. That's when I heard her voice. My brave, brilliant Zoe speaking into her tablet upstairs. "I have videos, Uncle Jerome. Lots of them. Daddy doesn't know I've been recording when he hurts Mommy. But I also found out about the other women. I have pictures of his secret phone and all the messages." My blood ran cold. Videos, pictures, messages. How long had my baby been carrying this burden? How many nights had she hidden in her room, watching her father destroy her mother while building a case against him? "Mommy tries to hide everything," Zoe continued, her voice steady despite what must have been overwhelming fear. "She puts makeup on the bruises and tells everyone she's clumsy. But I see everything. I see how scared she gets when Daddy comes home. I see how she found his secret phone tonight and how angry he got when she asked about the other women." Victor had moved to his study, probably to pour himself a drink and figure out how to spin this disaster, giving me a moment to process what was happening upstairs. My daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, had been secretly documenting not just the abuse, but Victor's infidelity. She had been building a case I'd been too afraid and ashamed to build myself. "I tried to protect Mommy tonight," Lily whispered, and I could hear the tears in her voice now. "I wanted to come downstairs when I heard him yelling about the phone, but Mommy saw me and shook her head. She always tries to protect me, but who's protecting her? If you're listening to this and you have children, please understand they see everything. They hear everything. Don't let them carry the weight of your secrets. There are people who will help if you just reach out." The marble floor was hard and cold beneath me, broken pieces of my shattered coffee mug cutting into my palm as I tried to push myself up. But in that moment, despite the physical pain, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope mixed with a burning desire for justice. My daughter had found a way to reach my brother Jerome, a detective who would know exactly what to do with her evidence. She had just armed him with everything he needed to destroy Victor completely. "Please come help us, Uncle Jerome," she whispered. "I don't know what else to do, but I have proof of everything now. All the times he hurt her, and all the times he lied to her." As I listened to Zoe's desperate plea echoing through our house, I realized that everything was about to change. My little girl had just become our lifeline, and she didn't even know she had also become Victor's worst nightmare. 3 years earlier, I thought I was Cinderella at the ball. Victor Hawthorne was everything I'd dreamed of in a husband. Successful, charming, from one of the most powerful families in the state. When he proposed after just 8 months of dating, I said yes without hesitation. I was 28, naive, and completely blind to what was coming. The Hawthorne family welcomed me with open arms, or so I thought. Victor's mother, Vivian, would smile and tell everyone how delighted she was that her son had found such a lovely girl. His father, Reginald, would pat Victor on the back and joke about how he'd better treat me right. They lived in a sprawling estate that looked like something from a magazine, with manicured gardens and a circular driveway. And suddenly, I was part of their world. Kelly is going to fit beautifully into our family, Vivienne would say at their dinner parties, her perfectly manicured hand resting on my shoulder. She understands what it means to be a Hawthorne wife. At the time, I thought she meant I belonged. I didn't realize she meant I should know my place beneath them. I didn't understand that Hawthorne wife was a position with very specific requirements, all of which involved making Victor look good while disappearing myself. The first year of marriage was like living in a romantic movie. Victor would surprise me with jewelry for no reason, take me to exclusive restaurants, and tell me how much he loved coming home to me. I had abandoned my psychology graduate program to focus on being the perfect wife, just like he'd suggested. Why stress yourself with school when I can provide everything we need? He'd said, holding me close in our king-sized bed. I want to take care of you, Kelly. Let me be your everything. It seemed romantic then. Now I know it was the first link in the chain that would bind me to him completely. Baby Zoe arrived 18 months later, and for a brief moment, I thought I had everything I'd ever wanted. A beautiful daughter, a successful husband, a family that accepted me. But looking back, Zoe's birth was when the mask began to slip. The house needs to be perfect when I bring clients home, Victor said when Zoe was 6 months old and I was struggling with postpartum exhaustion. My mother noticed dust on the mantel last week, and my father commented that the yard wasn't properly maintained. You're making me look bad, Kelly. I had been awake every 2 hours feeding Zoe, trying to maintain a house that belonged in a magazine while recovering from childbirth. But apparently, it wasn't enough. Nothing ever was. The criticism became daily. The way I dressed wasn't sophisticated enough for a Hawthorne wife. The meals I prepared weren't impressive enough for unexpected guests. I talked too little at family gatherings, then too much at business dinners. I was too focused on Zoe, then not maternal enough when she cried during important phone calls. If you want to support your family, these details matter, he would say, his voice getting that cold edge I was learning to fear. Other men have wives who enhance their success. I need you to do better. The Hawthorne family watched it all and called it Victor helping me improve. He just wants the best for you, dear, Vivienne would say when she caught Victor correcting me in public. He's teaching you how to represent the family properly. You should be grateful he cares enough to guide you. If this sounds familiar, if you're walking on eggshells trying to be perfect for someone who keeps moving the goalposts, please know this isn't love. This is control. And it always gets worse. When the physical violence started, they called it passion. When he began grabbing my wrist too tightly during arguments, they said he was just stressed from work. And when I started showing up to family events with bruises I claimed were from being clumsy, they nodded sympathetically and suggested I be more careful. The isolation happened so gradually I didn't notice until it was complete. First, Victor would get upset when I wanted to visit my brother Jerome. He doesn't approve of our lifestyle, Victor would say. Why do you want to hurt me by choosing him over me? Then my college friends started seeming less important as Victor filled our weekends with Hawthorne family activities. Phone calls to anyone outside the family became selfish and took time away from my responsibilities as his wife. By the time Zoe turned 2, I realized I had nowhere to turn and no one to call. Victor controlled every penny we had, monitored every conversation I attempted, and his family had convinced everyone, including me, that any problems in our marriage were my fault. You're so fortunate to have Victor, his sister Cordelia would tell me at family dinners. Not every man would be so patient with someone who needs so much guidance. I started believing them. I started thinking I really was clumsy, really was too sensitive, really was failing as a wife and mother. The woman who had once been 2 semesters away from a psychology doctorate began to disappear completely. But even in my darkest moments, I never stopped protecting Zoe. I thought I was hiding the truth from her. I thought my baby girl was safe from seeing the ugly reality of what our perfect life had become. I was so wrong. Children see everything. I learned this truth the hard way when Zoe was 7, and it broke my heart while simultaneously filling me with pride at her incredible courage. I had been so careful, or so I thought. Whenever Victor's voice started rising, I would quickly send Zoe to her room to play or watch cartoons. When his hands left marks on my arms, I wore long sleeves and blazers. When his words cut deep enough to make me cry, I waited until she was asleep to let the tears fall. But children are far more perceptive than we give them credit for. And Zoe was always the brightest star in any room, observing everything with those intelligent eyes that missed nothing. The first time I realized she knew something was wrong, we were baking cookies together on a Saturday morning. Victor had left early for golf with his father, and for a few precious hours, our house felt peaceful. Zoe was standing on her little step stool, carefully measuring flour into a bowl when she looked up at me with those knowing eyes. "Mama, why do you get scared when Daddy's car pulls in the driveway?" My hands froze on the mixing bowl. "What do you mean, sweetheart? You always get this look on your face," she said, tilting her head the way she did when she was working through a problem. "Like in movies when something bad is about to happen. Your whole body gets tight and you start moving really fast around the house." I forced a smile, but my heart was racing. Daddy just likes things to be neat and tidy when he gets home. I want everything to be perfect for him. Zoe nodded, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me. 7-year-olds might not understand adult problems, but they know when something doesn't feel right in their world. Over the next few months, I started noticing how Zoe would watch us during dinner. Her little fork would pause halfway to her mouth when Victor would criticize my cooking. She would shrink back in her chair when his voice got sharp. And when he would grab my wrist to emphasize a point about something I'd done wrong, I would catch Zoe staring at his hand with worry creasing her small brow. If you have children and you're in an abusive relationship, please understand they're absorbing everything. They're forming their understanding of love and relationships based on what they see in your home. They deserve better, and so do you. The night everything changed for her was a Tuesday in November. Victor had been having problems at work, some deal that wasn't closing the way he'd promised his clients, which meant everything at home was wrong. The house wasn't clean enough despite my spending the entire day scrubbing. Dinner wasn't impressive enough despite my following his mother's recipe exactly. And I wasn't supportive enough despite my agreeing with everything he said. His shouting had been escalating all week, and I was running out of ways to shield Zoe from his anger. That night, I thought she was safely upstairs doing homework when Victor exploded over finding a water glass left on the coffee table. "Are you kidding me, Kelly?" he screamed, throwing the glass across the living room where it shattered against the wall. "I work 14 hours a day to maintain our lifestyle, and you can't even keep the house presentable." I was scrambling to clean up the broken glass, apologizing repeatedly, when I heard a small voice behind me. "Daddy, please don't yell at Mama. She worked really hard cleaning today." I saw her. My blood turned to ice. Zoe was standing in the doorway in her pajamas, her favorite stuffed elephant clutched against her chest. Her chin was trembling, but she was trying to be brave for me. Victor spun around, and for a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Maybe shame, maybe surprise at being caught, but it was gone instantly, replaced by that cold anger I knew too well. "Zoe, go to your room right now." "But Daddy, Mama didn't do anything wrong. She cleaned all day and made your favorite dinner. Please don't be mad at her." My 7-year-old daughter was standing up to her father to protect me. The courage in her small voice made me want to cry and run to her at the same time, but I was frozen between terror for what Victor might do and amazement at my daughter's bravery. "Zoe," I said softly, "go upstairs, honey. Everything's okay." But as she reluctantly turned to leave, I saw her look back at me with an expression that was far too old for her face. In that moment, I realized my daughter had been carrying the weight of our family's secret for much longer than I'd ever imagined. That night, after Victor had gone to his study to drink and sulk, I found Zoe sitting by her bedroom window, still awake. "Mama," she whispered when I tucked her in, Are you and Daddy going to be okay? I wanted to tell her yes, wanted to promise her that everything was fine. But looking into those worried eyes, I couldn't lie anymore. We're going to figure it out, sweetheart. But no matter what happens, you and I are always going to be okay. She nodded and hugged me tight. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby girl. More than you'll ever know. What I didn't know was that my brave daughter had already decided she wasn't going to wait for us to figure it out. She had started making plans of her own. Plans that would eventually bring down Victor's entire world. The year Zoe turned 8 was when I truly understood what trapped meant. Victor's control had evolved beyond criticism and shouting into a web so intricate and tight I couldn't see any way out. It started with the financial prison. One morning, I went to buy groceries and my card was declined. Embarrassed, I called Victor from the parking lot, thinking there must be some banking error. I've restructured our finances, he said casually, like he was discussing the weather. From now on, you'll request money for specific purchases. I'm tired of wondering where every dollar goes. But Victor, how am I supposed to buy food for the family? What about Zoe's school supplies and activities? You make a list. Kelly, you plan ahead. Maybe this will teach you to be more responsible with money. Money that I had never been allowed to earn. Money from the career I had abandoned at his request. But pointing that out would only make things worse. The Hawthorne family thought this was wonderful. Victor is such a responsible provider, Vivienne told me at their weekly family dinner. He's teaching you the value of money. My generation understood these things. Men handle finances. Women handle the home. But handling the home became impossible when Victor's standards reached impossible heights. The house had to be spotless every second of every day, even with an active 8-year-old living there. Zoe's toys couldn't be visible anywhere except her bedroom. Dinner had to be ready at exactly 6:30, regardless of traffic, Zoe's activities, or any other real-world complications. I don't understand why this is so challenging, he would say when I inevitably fell short of perfection. Other wives manage just fine. Maybe the problem is that you're not trying hard enough. The physical violence escalated gradually. A shove when I was in his way. A grip on my arm that lasted too long when he was making a point. The first time he actually struck me, it was over a phone call from my brother Jerome. Jerome had called while Victor was at work, just checking in like he did every few weeks. We talked for maybe 15 minutes about normal things. How Zoe was doing in school, the weather, his new apartment. When Victor came home and saw Jerome's number on the caller ID, his face went dark. Why was your brother calling here? He just wanted to see how we were doing. He misses us. He doesn't trust me to take care of my own family. That's what this is really about. Victor's voice was getting that dangerous edge. He thinks I'm not good enough for his precious sister. That's not true, Victor. Jerome likes you. He just wants to stay in touch. Don't lie to me. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. The sting across my cheek was nothing compared to the shock. He had grabbed and pushed before, but never struck me like that. You will not take calls from him when I'm not here, he said, his voice calm again as if nothing had happened. If Jerome wants to speak to you, he can do it when I'm home to supervise. I should have called Jerome right then. I should have packed Zoe's things and left that night. Instead, I found myself apologizing for upsetting Victor and promising to do better. If you're in a situation like this, please don't wait for it to get worse. It always gets worse. Reach out to someone, anyone, who can help you see clearly and plan safely. The Hawthorne family's response to my first visible bruise was predictably dismissive. Men get stressed, Victor's sister Cordelia explained when she noticed the mark on my wrist at church. The important thing is that you learn from these little disagreements. Little disagreements. That's what they called it when their son and brother grabbed me hard enough to leave fingerprints on my skin. But 8-year-old Zoe was watching everything with different eyes than the adults who chose to look away. I started noticing how she would suddenly appear in doorways when Victor's voice got loud. How she would offer to help me in the kitchen during tense dinners. How she began asking careful questions about my frequent clumsiness. Mama, do you need me to get you more makeup? She asked one morning after a particularly bad night had left a bruise on my cheekbone. What do you mean, sweetheart? For covering up the purple spots. I saw you putting extra makeup on your face this morning. Do you need more so it doesn't show? My 8-year-old daughter knew I was covering bruises. She had figured out that the accidents I claimed to have weren't really accidents at all. The weight of that knowledge settled over both of us like a heavy blanket neither of us knew how to lift. I'm okay, Zoe. Sometimes mommies just bump into things. She looked at me with those wise, sad eyes and nodded. Okay, Mama. But if you need help with anything, you can tell me. I'm good at keeping secrets. Secrets. My baby girl was already learning to keep secrets about her own home, about her own family. That night, as I lay in bed listening to Victor's satisfied snoring, I made a promise to myself and to Zoe. Somehow, someway, I was going to find the strength to get us both out of this nightmare. What I didn't know was that Zoe was making her own promises. And unlike me, she was already figuring out exactly how to keep them. I had no idea that my 9-year-old daughter had become a detective in her own home. For months, while I was focused on surviving each day without triggering Victor's anger, Zoe was quietly building a case that would destroy him completely. It started with the tablet Victor had bought her for her 9th birthday, thinking it would keep her entertained and out of the way during his increasingly frequent rages. What he didn't realize was that he had handed Zoe the most powerful weapon she could have asked for. I discovered her secret completely by accident. I was putting away laundry in her room when I accidentally knocked her tablet off her desk. When I picked it up, the screen was still open to a folder labeled School Project. But the contents weren't for any school assignment. They were photos of my bruises. My hands shook as I scrolled through dozens of images. My black eye from 2 months ago, carefully photographed from multiple angles. The handprint bruises on my arms from last week, documented with timestamps. The split lip from when Victor had lost his temper over a dinner that was 5 minutes late. Each photo was dated and had a note written in Zoe's careful handwriting. Daddy hit Mama because dinner was late. Daddy pushed Mama down for asking about money. Daddy squeezed Mama's arms really hard when she mentioned Uncle Jerome. But the photos were just the beginning. There were video files, too. Somehow, my brilliant daughter had figured out how to record audio and video from her bedroom. The files were organized by date and time, and as I listened to one with headphones, I heard Victor screaming at me from 3 weeks ago, calling me worthless and pathetic while dishes crashed in the background. Zoe, I called softly, and she appeared in her doorway looking guilty and terrified. I'm sorry, Mama. I know I wasn't supposed to be recording, but I had to. Nobody believes that Daddy hurts you, and I thought if I had proof. I sat down on her bed and pulled her close to me, my heart breaking and swelling with pride at the same time. How long have you been doing this, sweetheart? Since I got the tablet. At first, I was just taking pictures when you had bruises because I wanted to remember. But then I figured out how to record the sound from my room. When Daddy gets angry, I hide the tablet under my pillow and press record. My heart shattered. This little girl had been carrying such an enormous burden, trying to protect me in the only way she knew how. Zoe, this was very dangerous. What if Daddy had found out? I was really careful, Mama. I only recorded when my door was closed, and I learned how to put the files in hidden folders so nobody could find them unless they knew exactly where to look. I learned how to do it from YouTube. YouTube. My 9-year-old had been researching surveillance techniques on YouTube to document her father's abuse. I also looked up stuff about helping moms who get hurt by dads, she continued. The website said I needed to tell a trusted adult and I needed to have proof. So I've been collecting proof. She showed me everything. Months of carefully documented evidence that painted a devastating picture of escalating domestic violence. But what amazed me most was what she planned to do with all this information. I found Uncle Jerome's phone number in your old address book, she said quietly. I've been wanting to call him, but the internet said I should have lots of proof first so he would believe me and know how to help. You want to call Uncle Jerome? The website said police officers and military people know about helping families in danger, and Daddy always gets really quiet and nervous when Uncle Jerome's name comes up, like he's scared of him or something. She was absolutely right. Victor had always been uncomfortable around my brother, a decorated detective who had never quite bought into Victor's charm offensive. I've been practicing what I say to him, Zoe continued. I wrote it all down so I wouldn't forget anything important. Do you want to see? She pulled out a composition notebook filled with her careful handwriting. She had documented dates, times, and descriptions of every incident she had witnessed or recorded. She had noted patterns in Victor's behavior, tracked the escalation of violence, and even researched legal terms for what was happening to us. But then she showed me something that made my blood run cold and hot with rage at the same time. Hidden in the back of the notebook were printed screenshots from Victor's phone. How did you? He leaves his phone on the kitchen counter when he showers, she said matter-of-factly. I figured out his passcode by watching him type it. It's your birthday, Mama. My birthday. He used my birthday as his passcode while texting other women behind my back. I took pictures of all his text messages with the other ladies. Anastasia from his work, Gabrielle from next door, and Felicia who used to be your friend. They send him pictures and make plans to meet when you think he's working late. Zoe, you are the bravest, smartest little girl in the world, but this is too much for someone your age to handle. I know, Mama, but somebody has to help us. And all the grown-ups who are supposed to help don't even know what's happening. Uncle Jerome would help us if he knew the truth, wouldn't he? I looked at my daughter, this incredible child who had been quietly working to save us both, and realized she was absolutely right. Jerome would move heaven and earth to protect us if he knew what Victor was really doing. Yes, sweetheart. Uncle Jerome would definitely help us. Then can I call him tonight? I have everything ready. I thought about it for a long moment. Once we made that call, there would be no going back. Everything would change. But as I looked at the evidence my daughter had so carefully gathered, I realized that change was exactly what we needed. Yes, Zoe. Tonight we call Uncle Jerome. Little did I know that Victor's absolute worst night was about to become the moment that set us free and gave us everything we needed to destroy him completely. Christmas Eve at the Hawthorne family estate was supposed to be perfect. Vivienne had spent weeks planning the menu, the decorations, the gift exchange. Everything had to be flawless for their annual display of family superiority. What she didn't plan for was my daughter's courage and intelligence finally bringing their golden boy's world crashing down. The call to Jerome had happened 3 days earlier. Zoe had been incredibly brave, speaking clearly and methodically into the phone while I sat beside her, my heart pounding with each word she spoke. Uncle Jerome, I need you to help my mama. Daddy hurts her, and he's been cheating on her with other women. I have proof of everything. Jerome's detective training kicked in immediately. He asked careful questions, listened to Zoe's recordings through the phone, and reviewed her photos through a video call. When he saw the evidence my 9-year-old had collected, his voice became deadly calm. Zoe, you did exactly the right thing. I'm going to handle this, but I need you and your mom to act normal for just a few more days while I put some things in place. Can you do that? Yes, sir. That's my brave niece. Help is coming very soon. Now, sitting around the Hawthorns' enormous dining table, I was struggling to keep my composure. Victor was in his element, playing the perfect son and husband for his parents and extended family. He carved the ham with flourish, made jokes about football, and even put his arm around me for the family photos that would later become evidence of his deception. Isn't Kelly looking lovely today? Vivienne announced to the table. That red dress is so becoming on you, dear. It was the only dress I owned that completely covered the bruises on my ribs and back from Victor's rage 2 nights earlier when he'd found out his biggest client was considering switching firms. Zoe sat quietly beside me, picking at her food. She had been unusually calm all week, and I wondered if the weight of our secret was becoming too much for her. But when I looked at her, I saw something in her eyes that I finally recognized. Determination mixed with anticipation. She knew something was about to happen. The explosion came, as it always did, over something insignificant. I had been helping Vivienne serve dessert when I accidentally brushed against Victor's chair. His wine glass tilted slightly, spilling a few drops of red wine on the white tablecloth. Kelly. The change in his voice was instant and terrifying, cutting through the pleasant family chatter like a knife. Look what you've done. Can't you move across a room without destroying something? The entire table fell silent. Vivienne rushed to get club soda, making nervous comments about how these things happen. But Victor wasn't finished. "This is exactly what I deal with every single day," he continued, his voice getting louder and more vicious. "She's completely incompetent. Can't cook properly, can't clean properly, can't even walk across a room without causing damage." "Victor," his father said uncomfortably, "it's just a little wine. Just a little wine." Victor stood up, towering over me as I tried to clean the small stain. "This is my life. Living with someone who can't do anything right. Do you people have any idea what it's like coming home to this every single day?" I felt the familiar terror rising in my chest, but something else was rising too. For the first time in 3 years, I felt a flicker of power. I knew Jerome was coming. I knew Zoe had documented everything. And I knew Victor's reign of terror was about to end. His hand moved toward me, and I instinctively flinched, which made him even angrier. "Look at that. She acts like I'm going to hurt her. Like I'm some kind of monster when all I do is work to provide the lifestyle she enjoys." That's when Zoe stood up. "But you do hurt her, Daddy. And you lie to her too." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Every person at that table turned to stare at my 9-year-old daughter, who was standing with her tablet in her hands and courage blazing in her eyes. "Zoe, sit down right now," Victor said, his voice dangerously quiet. "No." My daughter's voice was steady and clear. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of watching you hurt Mama and lie to her while everybody acts like you're this perfect husband and father." She looked around the table at all the shocked faces. "You all think he's so wonderful, but you don't know what he's really like. You don't see what happens when nobody else is watching." "Zoe, that's enough," Vivienne said sharply. "Children shouldn't speak about things they don't understand." "I understand more than you think." Zoe held up her tablet. "I have videos of him hitting her. I have pictures of all the bruises he gives her. I have recordings of him screaming at her and calling her horrible names. But that's not all," she continued, her voice getting stronger. "I also have pictures of his secret phone and all the text messages from his girlfriends. Anastasia, Gabrielle, and Felicia. I have proof that he's been cheating on Mama while hurting her." The room erupted in chaos. Victor lunged toward Zoe, his face twisted with rage, but I stepped between them. Vivienne started demanding to know what lies we had been telling people. Reginald was shouting about family business staying private. Victor's sister Cordelia was gasping about ungrateful children spreading vicious rumors. But through all the chaos, I heard the sound I had been hoping for. My brother's voice at the front door. "Where are my sister and my niece?" Detective Jerome Bennett walked into that dining room like he owned it, followed by 2 uniformed officers and a woman I would later learn was a victim's advocate. His presence immediately changed the energy in the room from chaos to controlled authority. "Kelly, Zoe, step away from him," Jerome commanded, and we moved to stand beside him without hesitation. Victor tried one last desperate play. "This is all a misunderstanding, Detective Bennett. Kelly and Zoe have been telling stories, probably trying to get attention or—" "I've seen the evidence," Jerome cut him off, his voice like ice. 9 months of documented domestic violence. Video, audio, photographs, all carefully collected and preserved by my 9-year-old niece because the adults who should have been protecting her mother failed completely. He looked around at the Hawthorne family with disgust. "You all knew. You all saw the signs, heard the shouting, noticed the bruises, and you chose to look the other way because it was easier than holding your son accountable. But the domestic violence is only part of the story," Jerome continued. "We also have extensive evidence of adultery, financial control, and emotional abuse. Victor, you've been living a double life, and it ends today." One of the uniformed officers stepped forward with papers. "Victor Hawthorne, you're being served with a restraining order. You need to stay at least 500 feet away from Kelly and Zoe at all times. You're also being arrested on suspicion of domestic violence." As Victor was handcuffed, still protesting his innocence and blaming me for destroying the family, Vivienne turned to me with venom in her eyes. "This family gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. By having our son arrested in front of everyone on Christmas Eve." Jerome's voice was deadly calm. "This family gave her nothing but bruises, trauma, and a cheating husband. And it's over now. The investigation into Victor's activities is just beginning, the victim's advocate added quietly. We'll be looking into his business practices, his relationships with other women, and his history of controlling behavior. This isn't going away. Zoe slipped her small hand into mine as we walked out of that mansion for the last time. We did it, Mama, she whispered. We're free, and now everyone knows the truth about him. If you're in a dangerous relationship, please know that freedom is possible. There are people trained to help you leave safely and rebuild your life. Don't wait for someone else to save you, but don't try to handle it alone either. 6 months later, I barely recognize the woman I used to be. As I look in the mirror before my first day back in graduate school, I see someone I haven't seen in years, myself. The bruises are gone. The constant fear has faded. And for the first time since I was 28 years old, I'm making decisions about my own life. Mama, you look beautiful, Zoe says from my bedroom doorway. She's holding her backpack, ready for her own first day at a new school in our new town. We moved 2 hours away to live closer to Jerome, and Zoe couldn't be more excited about the fresh start. The months since Christmas Eve have been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and rebuilding our lives from scratch. Victor fought everything at first, with his family hiring expensive lawyers and trying to paint Zoe's evidence as fabricated or coached by me. But 9 months of documented abuse and infidelity don't lie, and Judge Patterson saw right through their attempts to discredit a 9-year-old girl's courage. Your daughter showed remarkable intelligence and bravery, the judge had told me after Victor accepted a plea deal that included mandatory anger management classes, community service, 3 years probation, and a permanent restraining order. She not only saved both your lives but exposed a pattern of deception that needed to be brought to light. The criminal charges were just the beginning of Victor's downfall. The evidence Zoe had collected became the foundation for a divorce case that stripped him of everything he thought he controlled. His infidelity, documented in excruciating detail through his own text messages and photos, voided any claim to alimony or spousal support. The judge awarded me majority custody of Zoe, substantial child support, and a significant portion of Victor's assets. But the real destruction came through social exposure. In a town where reputation meant everything, Victor's arrest on Christmas Eve became the scandal that destroyed the Hawthorne family's standing. When the local newspaper obtained copies of the court documents detailing his affairs, the reaction was swift and merciless. Anastasia lost her job when her company learned about her relationship with a married client. Gabrielle's husband divorced her immediately, taking their children and leaving her with nothing. Felicia faced the worst consequences of all. Our entire social circle discovered she had been betraying her supposed best friend for over a year, making her a pariah in every group she had once belonged to. Betrayal has consequences, I learned. When people show you who they really are, the whole community eventually sees it too. The Hawthorne family tried one desperate move to salvage their reputation. Vivienne actually showed up at Jerome's house, demanding that I stop this nonsense and come home to work things out with Victor. Jerome handled that conversation exactly the way I expected. Mrs. Hawthorne, your son is a domestic abuser and serial cheater, and your family enabled his behavior for years. Kelly and Zoe will never be in danger from him again, and frankly, your family name is ruined in this town. You need to leave my property now. We haven't heard from any of them since. The last I heard, they were trying to sell the estate and move to another state where their shame wouldn't follow them. Therapy has been the hardest part of healing, but also the most important. Dr. Ramirez, our counselor, helped me understand how the abuse had rewired my thinking, made me doubt my own worth, and convinced me I deserved the treatment I received. She also helped Zoe process the trauma of witnessing violence and carrying such an enormous secret for so long. Zoe showed signs of what we call parentification. Dr. Ramirez explained to me. She felt responsible for protecting you, which is a burden no child should carry. But she's incredibly resilient, and with proper support, she's going to thrive. And thrive she has. My daughter continues to amaze me every day with her strength, wisdom, and compassion. She's excelling at her new school, made wonderful friends, and even started a peer counseling group where kids can talk about difficult situations at home. For those of you supporting someone through recovery from abuse, please be patient. Healing isn't linear, and rebuilding trust in yourself and others takes time. But it's absolutely possible. Last week, something happened that showed me just how much Zoe has grown and how she's channeling her experience into helping others. We were at the grocery store when she noticed a woman with a black eye standing in the pharmacy section with her young daughter. The woman was nervously checking her phone while the little girl clung to her leg, both of them radiating the kind of fear I remembered too well. Zoe approached them carefully. "Excuse me," she said politely to the woman. "Are you okay? My mama and I had to get help from some dangerous people once, and there are good people who can help if you need them." The woman looked startled, then knelt down to Zoe's level. "What kind of help?" Zoe pulled a card from her backpack, one of the domestic violence hotline cards Dr. Ramirez had given us to share with others. "These people helped us when someone was hurting my mama and lying to her. They're really nice and they know how to keep people safe." Later, as we were putting groceries in our car, the woman approached us with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "I called the number. Someone is coming to help me and my daughter today." I hugged Zoe tight as we drove home. "You know what you did today? You might have saved 2 lives. Just like Uncle Jerome and all the good people saved us," she said matter-of-factly. "When you know how to get help, you should share it with other people who need it." Starting graduate school again feels like reclaiming a dream I had buried years ago. My focus is now on domestic violence counseling and family trauma therapy. I want to use my experience, combined with proper training, to help other women and children escape situations like the one we survived. Jerome offered to pay for everything, but I insisted on taking out student loans. "I need to do this myself, Jerome. I need to know I can take care of Zoe and myself." "You already proved that," he said, smiling. "But I understand. Independence is important after what you've been through. The most satisfying part of our new life is knowing that Victor's reputation never recovered. In a small town where business is built on relationships and trust, being exposed as an abuser and serial cheater was a death sentence for his career. His firm quietly let him go, citing irreconcilable differences with the company's values. His country club membership was revoked. Even his golf buddies stopped returning his calls. Sometimes the best revenge isn't plotting someone's downfall, I've learned. Sometimes it's simply telling the truth and letting natural consequences unfold. As I walk Zoe to her new school this morning, she takes my hand and looks up at me with those bright, brave eyes that saved us both. "Mama, do you think other kids who are scared like I used to be will know they can ask for help?" "I hope so, sweetheart. And if they do, I hope they're as brave as you were." "They can be," she says with the confidence of someone who has faced the worst and emerged stronger. "Everyone can be brave when they need to be. They just need to remember that there are always people who will help if they know the truth." My daughter is right. There are always people who will help if they know the truth. You just have to be brave enough to tell it. And sometimes that bravery comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes from a 9-year-old girl with a tablet and the courage to document the truth when the adults around her chose to look away. If you're listening to this story and recognizing patterns in your own life, please know that you deserve better. Your children deserve better. There are people trained to help you leave safely and rebuild your life. Don't let shame or fear keep you trapped in a situation that's stealing your life and your children's childhood. We're not just survivors anymore. We're thrivers. We're free. And we're using our freedom to make sure other families can find their way to safety too. But Victor's story doesn't end with his arrest and our escape. The investigation that Jerome launched on Christmas Eve uncovered layers of deception that went far beyond domestic violence and adultery. It turns out that my ex-husband's double life included financial crimes that would destroy what remained of his reputation and his family's legacy. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Victor was arrested again. This time for embezzlement, tax fraud, and money laundering. The forensic accountants Jerome had brought in discovered that Victor had been stealing from his own investment firm for over 2 years, using the money to fund his affairs and maintain his expensive lifestyle. The beautiful jewelry he had given Anastasia, paid for with stolen client funds. The weekend getaways with Gabrielle, funded by money embezzled from retirees' pension accounts. The expensive gifts for Felicia, purchased with cash that belonged to families saving for their children's college educations. When someone shows you they have no moral boundaries in one area of their life, Jerome explained to me, it usually means they have no boundaries anywhere else either. The federal investigation revealed that Victor's crimes had cost his clients over $2 million. Families lost their retirement savings. Small businesses lost their emergency funds. All so that Victor could maintain his image as a successful provider while systematically destroying his own family. The trial was a media sensation. Every sordid detail became public record. The affairs, the abuse, the financial crimes, all of it laid bare for the entire community to see. Victor's lawyer tried to paint him as a man who had simply lost his way, but the evidence was overwhelming and the judge was unmoved. Mr. Hawthorne, Judge Patterson said during sentencing, "You have shown a pattern of deception and cruelty that is breathtaking in its scope. You abused your wife, manipulated your child, betrayed your client's trust, and stole their money to fund your selfish desires. You will serve 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. 8 years. For 8 years, Victor would be locked away, unable to hurt anyone else, unable to charm his way out of consequences, unable to control or manipulate the people around him." The Hawthorne family's humiliation was complete. Reginald lost his seat on the bank's board of directors. Vivienne resigned from every social organization she had once ruled. Cordelia's husband quietly filed for divorce, taking their children to another state to escape the scandal. Their enabling of Victor's behavior didn't just hurt you and Zoe, Dr. Ramirez observed during one of our sessions. It ultimately destroyed their own family too. That's what happens when people choose image over integrity. But perhaps the most satisfying twist in Victor's downfall came from an unexpected source. 6 months after his conviction, I received a call from a lawyer representing a class action lawsuit against Victor and his former firm. "Mrs. Reese, we're representing the families Victor defrauded," the lawyer explained. "We've discovered that he has significant assets hidden in offshore accounts and real estate investments. We'd like to offer you the opportunity to join our suit to recover those funds." It turned out that Victor had been far more clever than anyone realized, hiding millions in shell companies and foreign accounts. Proceedings. Money that legally belonged to the clients he had stolen from, but which could now be recovered and distributed. As the primary victim of Victor's domestic violence, and as someone who had unknowingly benefited from his stolen funds during our marriage, I was entitled to a substantial settlement from the recovered assets. Money that I immediately put into a trust fund for Zoe's education and donated to domestic violence organizations. "I don't want anything that came from Victor's crimes," I told the lawyer. "But I do want to make sure it helps other families escape situations like ours." The final piece of Victor's destruction came from his fellow inmates. Word spreads quickly in prison about what someone is incarcerated for, and men who abuse women and children are not popular among the general prison population. Victor, who had once commanded respect through fear and manipulation, found himself at the bottom of a very different hierarchy. His learning what it feels like to be powerless, Jerome observed with grim satisfaction. For the first time in his life, he can't talk his way out of consequences or buy his way out of trouble. 2 years into his sentence, Victor tried to contact me through his lawyer, claiming he wanted to apologize and make amends. I declined to hear whatever he had to say. "Some people deserve forgiveness," I told Dr. Ramirez. "Others deserve to be forgotten. Victor has cost me enough years of my life. I won't give him another minute of my attention." "That's not cruelty, Kelly," she assured me. "That's wisdom." Today, 5 years after that Christmas Eve when our lives changed forever, I'm graduating with my doctorate in clinical psychology. Zoe, now 14, sits in the front row with Jerome, beaming with pride as I walk across the stage. My dissertation focused on the long-term effects of childhood exposure to domestic violence, and I've already been offered a position at a trauma counseling center that specializes in helping families heal from abuse. Dr. Kelly Reese, the dean announces, and I can't help but smile. The woman who once thought she was worthless, who once believed she deserved to be hurt and controlled, is now Dr. Kelly Reese, ready to help other families find their way to freedom. Zoe has grown into a remarkable young woman, wise beyond her years but still full of joy and hope for the future. She's an honor student, a peer mediator at her school, and volunteers at the local women's shelter on weekends. Her childhood experience, as traumatic as it was, has given her a unique ability to connect with other children who are struggling. "I want to be a lawyer," she told me recently. "Not just any lawyer, but the kind who helps protect families like ours. I want to make sure kids don't have to be their own detectives like I was." Victor is now in year 5 of his 8-year sentence. "I've heard through legal channels that his appeals have all been denied and that he's not eligible for early parole. His family never visits him. His former friends have moved on. The women he cheated with have all rebuilt their lives and want nothing to do with their shared past. He is, in every sense that matters, forgotten by the world he once tried so desperately to impress. The best revenge truly is living well, I've learned. When someone tries to destroy you, the most powerful response is to rebuild yourself stronger than before." Our story has become something of a legend in our new community. Not because of the dramatic courtroom scenes or the media coverage, but because of what Zoe accomplished as a child. She's been invited to speak at schools about recognizing abuse and seeking help from trusted adults. Her message is always the same: children see everything, and they have the power to change their families' stories. "Adults sometimes forget that kids are smart," she tells younger children. "We notice things. We understand more than grown-ups think we do. And if something doesn't feel right in your house, you can find a trusted adult to help." She's helped 3 families in our new town escape abusive situations by teaching children how to document evidence and reach out for help. Local law enforcement has consulted with her on cases involving domestic violence and children. At 14, my daughter has become an advocate for other families in crisis. If you're listening to this story and you have children, please talk to them about healthy relationships and appropriate behavior. I want to tell every parent. Give them the words to describe what they're experiencing and the knowledge that they can always come to you for help. Last month, we received news that Victor had been denied his final appeal and would serve his complete sentence. That same week, I received a letter from Anastasia, his former mistress and my replacement at his office. "Kelly," she wrote, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I needed to thank you and Zoe for saving my life too. I didn't realize it at the time, but Victor was abusing me just like he abused you. The control, the manipulation, the way he made me feel like I was worthless without him, I see it all clearly now. When his crimes were exposed, I was forced to examine my own choices and get help. I've been in therapy for 3 years, and I'm finally building a healthy relationship with someone who treats me with respect. Your courage to leave and Zoe's courage to speak up didn't just save your family. It saved mine too." Even Gabrielle, the neighbor who had betrayed our friendship, eventually reached out with her own apology and revelation that Victor had been manipulating her as well, promising to leave me for her while simultaneously pursuing other women. "Abusers don't just hurt their primary victims," Dr. Ramirez explained. "They create chaos and pain for everyone in their orbit. When their behavior is finally exposed, it often reveals a much larger web of manipulation and harm." The ripple effects of Victor's exposure continue to spread in positive ways. The women's shelter where I volunteer has seen increased funding and community support as people became more aware of domestic violence in our area. The legal system has implemented new protocols for documenting abuse based partly on the methods Zoe used to build our case. Jerome has been promoted to detective sergeant and now specializes in domestic violence cases. He credits Zoe's methodical evidence collection as inspiration for training programs he's developed for other families in crisis. "That little girl showed us that victims aren't helpless," he says proudly. "Sometimes they just need the right tools and the knowledge that someone will believe them." As I write the final pages of this story, Zoe is applying to pre-law programs at several universities. Her personal statement focuses on her experience as a child advocate and her determination to reform legal systems that fail to protect families from abuse. "I learned when I was 9 years old that justice doesn't happen automatically," she wrote. "Someone has to be brave enough to speak the truth, smart enough to document it properly, and persistent enough to make sure the right people listen. I want to spend my career making sure other families don't have to depend on a child with a tablet to save them." She's already been accepted to 3 top universities with full scholarships. Her story of courage and intelligence has inspired admissions committees and scholarship boards across the country. Victor's name has been largely forgotten by our old community, replaced in local gossip by fresher scandals and newer concerns. But the changes his exposure brought about have lasted. The country club where he once held court now has strict policies about member conduct. His former investment firm was absorbed by a larger company that implemented robust oversight and ethical standards. The Hawthorne family estate was eventually sold to a developer who turned it into affordable housing for single mothers and their children. I like to think Victor would hate knowing that the symbol of his family's wealth and power is now providing safety for the kind of families he once looked down upon. Sometimes justice takes time, I've learned, but it's more thorough and more permanent when it finally arrives. On quiet evenings, when Zoe is doing homework and I'm preparing for my clinical sessions the next day, I sometimes think about the woman I used to be. The one who thought she deserved to be hit, who believed she was lucky to have a husband who only called her names and controlled her money. The one who thought she was protecting her child by hiding the truth. That woman feels like a stranger to me now. Not because I'm ashamed of her, but because I understand how completely she had been conditioned to accept the unacceptable. She did the best she could with what she knew at the time. And when her daughter gave her the courage and evidence she needed to fight back, she found the strength to reclaim her life. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, Dr. Ramirez taught me. It means integrating your experiences in a way that makes you stronger and more compassionate, not bitter and broken. Today, I help other women find their voices and their power. I work with children who, like Zoe, have witnessed things no child should see. And I speak at conferences about the importance of believing victims and taking domestic violence seriously, no matter how successful or charming the perpetrator might appear. Victor's story is ultimately one of complete and total downfall. A man who thought he could control and manipulate everyone around him, who believed his wealth and family name made him untouchable, brought to his knees by the courage of a 9-year-old girl who refused to let him hurt her mother anymore. His victims, myself, his clients, even his mistresses, have all rebuilt and moved forward. We've found success, love, and peace in our new lives. Victor remains exactly where he belongs, forgotten, powerless, and paying the full price for his choices. If you're in a situation like the one I survived, please know that escape is possible. Justice is possible. And a beautiful life on the other side of trauma is absolutely possible. You just have to be brave enough to take the first step, smart enough to plan carefully, and persistent enough to see it through. Zoe and I are living proof that sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living well, speaking the truth, and making sure that justice, real, complete, permanent justice, finally has its day. We didn't just survive Victor Hawthorne. We exposed him, destroyed his power, and made sure he could never hurt anyone else again. And in doing so, we discovered that we were far stronger, smarter, and more capable than he ever let us believe. That's the story of how a little girl with a tablet and the courage to tell the truth brought down a monster and set us both free forever.